I stood in front of the fruit shelf with a box of strawberries already in my hand. Then I looked at the price tag and slowly placed it back. Last week, it cost less, and I was sure of that. But today, $2 felt like a decision I couldn't ignore. Around me, people kept shopping like usual, and their carts stayed full. Meanwhile, I quietly recalculated everything in my head. That day, I only had one simple goal: feed my family for a day on $20. I didn't expect the thing being tested wouldn't only be my money. My name is Clara. And that was the day I started asking myself something uncomfortable. Does giving my family the best always mean buying the best? That morning, I made a grocery list on a small piece of paper. Eggs, milk, bread, fruit, and a few ingredients for dinner slowly filled the page. The list looked ordinary when I finished, but the number forming in my head no longer felt ordinary. I opened one shopping app after another and compared the prices item by item. First store, second store, then a third. Nearly 30 minutes passed, just to save a few dollars. At the same time, the washing machine started running, Mira called from her room, and lunch still needed to be made. No one really sees this part. The part where saving money starts to feel like another job. I took a long breath before leaving for the supermarket. And all the way there, the number 20 stayed quietly in my mind. I stopped a little longer in front of the egg shelf. Prices that once felt ordinary suddenly looked different. I started noticing something. Almost everything I usually bought had gone up, little by little. There wasn't one big increase, but everything seemed to rise together, and the result felt heavier than expected. I picked up a yogurt and looked at the price. Then I placed it back. I reached for berries. Then I put those back too. I found myself choosing based on price, not based on what I actually wanted to buy. And the longer I stayed in the store, the more I wondered how many families might be doing the same thing. In the frozen food aisle, I stopped again. One box of processed food cost less than buying fresh ingredients. That comparison made me uncomfortable. The answer felt obvious, and that was exactly what unsettled me. I wanted to choose healthier food. But most days, the budget spoke louder. I looked at the label that said organic, then I looked at the number underneath it. For a few seconds, I felt guilty, as if choosing the cheaper option meant I cared less. I knew that wasn't true. Even so, the feeling still showed up. That day, I realized most of the pressure wasn't coming from the supermarket shelves. It was coming from my own thoughts. When I got home, everything looked exactly the way it usually did. Nothing in the house suggested that anything had changed. Mira was drawing at the table while Armand finished his work nearby. The evening continued in its usual rhythm. Nothing seemed wrong. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary day. But I was still thinking about the strawberries I left behind earlier. That small moment stayed with me longer than I expected. I was still thinking about the grocery list I would need to change. The adjustments had already started in my mind. I kept thinking about how many small decisions had to be made every day. None of them felt big on their own. And somehow, those small decisions were starting to feel more exhausting. I sat with that feeling without knowing exactly why. That night, we sat down and ate together. The meal was simple, but the warmth around the table made it feel complete. Mira seemed to enjoy her food without thinking much about it. Watching her quietly brought me a small sense of relief. Then she asked casually, as if it barely mattered, "Mom, are the strawberries gone?" I smiled and answered simply, "Yes, sweetheart." Myra nodded and returned to eating as usual. Nothing in her expression suggested disappointment. A few seconds later, she spoke again. "It's okay. We still have apples." Her words were simple, but suddenly my eyes felt warm. After Mira went to bed, I stayed behind to clear the dinner table alone. The house became quieter, but my thoughts felt louder than before. My mind returned to the fruit shelf from earlier that morning. I remembered each item I had quietly placed back where it belonged. Then something became clear to me. What hurt wasn't the strawberries themselves. What stayed with me was the fear. The fear that I wasn't giving my family the best. For a long time, I had measured myself as a mother by what I could buy, not by what I was already giving every day. I had been paying so much attention to what felt missing. I hadn't noticed what was still here with us. For the first time that day, I realized something difficult to admit. My guilt had grown larger than the financial problem itself. The night grew quieter as the house settled into stillness. Armand sat beside me in the living room, and neither of us felt the need to fill the silence. I finally told him everything I had been carrying, about the supermarket, the rising food prices, and the guilt that stayed with me afterward. Armand listened without interrupting. He looked at me as if he was trying to understand something he had never fully noticed before. I said quietly that I felt like I was failing whenever I could not buy the best. The words felt small once they were finally spoken out loud. Armand stayed quiet for a moment before answering. The pause felt thoughtful rather than uncertain. Then he said he had never seen it that way. What he saw was someone trying every day to keep the family okay. For the first time that day, I felt truly heard. Nothing had changed around me, but something felt quieter inside. The next day, we sat together at the dining table. Not to build another budget, and not to fix everything. We only tried to make a plan that felt simpler. Something that felt more realistic to live with. We wrote down the meals our family actually enjoys. Affordable, nourishing, and already part of our routine. There was no perfect target waiting for us. No lists that made us feel tense before we even started. We only wanted fewer last-minute decisions, so my mind wouldn't always have to carry it alone. A few days later, grocery shopping felt a little lighter. Not because anything had become cheaper. The difference was that I wasn't carrying every part of it by myself anymore, and that changed the feeling of the week in small ways. Slowly, I started understanding something. Being a parent is not always about being able to buy the very best. Sometimes it means making difficult choices, and continuing to make them with care and love. I learned that my family's health is not built from a single grocery basket. It grows from small habits repeated over time. If this story feels close to your life, you might feel comfortable here. Subscribe to Clara's Family Journal, and let's keep growing one small step at a time. And now I want to ask you something. Has the rising cost of everyday needs ever made you feel guilty or worried as a parent?